Hello and welcome back to the Age of Sunbros YouTube channel, here with another podcast episode. It seems to be in popular demand. I'm your host, Sir Shark Dad here, and I'm joined here by, I think, a sort of unexpected guest for a not as well-known side of Age of Empires 3. We have Assertive Wall here. I think it's Assertive Wall, right? Is that correct? You're a wall
that
that's
works.
assertive? Okay. What
You can call me AWOL, but
AWOL. Okay.
yeah, don't confuse me with the community manager, though.
Okay. Okay, so AWOL or Assertive Wall is here with us, and I'm very excited. Not only because he's an American, but also because he's going to kind of talk more about the modding scene and just how to, that kind of side of Age of Empires 3, which we haven't really gotten into. We've talked to a lot of different players, but not really people who work with the kind of coding of the game. So I'm very excited. Assertive Wall, thank you so much for joining me. I want to start off with a question that's totally unrelated. Are you, I asked Lionheart this question, but he's British, so I'm going to ask you this question. Are you a coffee or are you a tea guy?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I am a coffee guy.
Okay.
Although, I suppose I do drink Arnold Palmer's.
Okay. So an Arnold Palmer being like the lemonade and iced tea?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
A very Americanized,
Sure.
iced tea and lemonade kind of thing.
You know what's funny is that my mother, she's from the Bronx in New York City, one of the boroughs. And she told me that she never heard of an iced tea until she moved to Florida. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I was like, how in the 70s and 80s you'd never heard of a iced tea? She's like, yeah, no, it was never a thing. I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know where you are in the United States, but I guess Arnold Palmer, I imagine you're somewhere cold, but because usually most places are. So it's cool that you drink that.
Yeah, I'm pretty far north here.
Okay.
North of most Canadians, but...
Oh, okay. And then do you drink it from like the what is it, Arizona tea, or you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's the
grab those Arizona cans.
Yeah, 99 cents, man. Never change. In case you guys don't know, Arizona tea is like a brand that I don't know if they distribute internationally, but because whenever I've been overseas, I don't think I've seen them, but Arizona is like this like massive can of tea that you can get, iced cold tea. That's like 99 cents, right? So it's just under $1. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Let's get into it. So who are you? Explain who AWOL, Assertive Wall, is to the community, to those who probably have never heard of you.
Right, so I guess if you have heard of me, it's through the modding scene. So I'm involved with a few different mods. I'm primarily an AI scripter, so I'll mess around with the AI in the game, try to get it to do new things, and then I help out with part of the Age of Pirates team is the biggest one that I work on. So you play Age of Pirates, then you're playing against the assertive AI.
Okay. So let's
in that mod.
Let's go in order then. So explain to me what the Assertive AI is and what the intention behind it is, and what does it do?
So it's it's an AI mod, so it's trying to improve the functionality of the AI. And then going along with that, there's a few different goals of that, obviously. So I'm geared more towards making it play in different game modes and different styles, try to get a more replayable experience out of it. So that, it started off with water maps. So water maps were the primary thing I was looking at improving. But then that sort of expanded out into getting it to play on different game modes, get it to play the historical maps, and get it to play differently. So you may notice most of the games against the AI, it'll be sort of like an age 2 timing push is what the AI likes to do.
Yeah, pretty much all the time.
Not great, but also it's kind of the same strategy every single time. So I try to get it to where it'll rush you, it'll try to pull a fast fortress, it'll try and play a little differently every single game.
Okay.
But that's also sort of in contrast to maybe just trying to make it play purely better in the sense that it's more likely to beat you. It's supposed to be more replayable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess I'll ask the first question is it successful? Like, is this something that I should download? Like, do you have it working, or is this like a more of a concept thing that you're trying to get down?
Well, I obviously think so. Now, I think the general feedback on like if you go and play the mod or you play Age of Pirates is definitely different. So, like if you play on a water map of the standard AI versus Assertive AI, it'll be night and day on the differences there. Like we can get into more detailed like why the AI doesn't work in certain maps and certain scenarios. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then if you can even notice the changes on land, like there's certain things that are obviously different and obviously better, and then some areas where you may prefer the original AI. But yeah, without trying to just like gloat too hard, I think it's definitely worth giving it a shot.
yeah. So do you feel as if because typically speaking, let's say you have a build order, right? And you're like, well, I want to test it, but obviously I'm not going to go on the ranked ladder to do that, right? Because you don't want to sacrifice your precious elo points for whatever reason. So then you say, okay, well, I'm going to go in a skirmish, and then obviously people who kind of know what's up, they either play on like easy to kind of just test things out without being touched, or they will go and they'll play on extreme, right? Just to see, and
Hmm.
I find that playing on extreme, I can beat the AI playing on extreme just because, like you said, is that pretty much what they're gonna do, and they kind of sit right. Like once that push is done, and they get kind of stuck. So, would you say that your AI mod is kind of gonna be geared towards people who maybe just want to stick in the single player experience? I guess it would be for both. Like they would stick in the single player experience, and also for people like me that play multiplayer, I would want to download this mod because it would make it more akin to maybe what I would see on the ladder, right? Like it would be more human, I guess you could say.
Right. So I guess sort of two parts there. I would say that when I'm playing it and I'm testing it, it's definitely more for um, it's geared towards the person who plays either just by themselves or in a multiplayer lobby like humans versus AI
Mm-hmm.
players. I'm not necessarily looking at it like a trainer to help practice build orders against the AI, but I am trying to bring in some of that variability that you get against humans. So, one game against humans, they may rush you all out, and then the next, they may sit in their base and try to turtle and defend against you, right?
Interesting.
And so, I'm trying to bring some of that craziness and variability into it.
Okay. So
I think it
yeah,
is
just more fun, right? Because it just it makes it a more unpredictable experience that you have to adapt to, rather than you hop on single player or historical battles and you're like, it's the same thing every time.
absolutely. And then another piece of that is I do make sure it is multiplayer compatible. So if you want to play against humans, all you need to do is download and host a game with it, and they'll be playing against the AI mod.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so doesn't impact multiplayer whatsoever, so people can feel free to like just go ahead and have that, and then you can even play it in team games, right, with your friends. Is that what you're saying, that I can hop in a 2v2 against your AI mod, and then it would behave differently?
Yep. So if you download Assertive AI, you install it, and you host the game, then you'll be playing against Assertive AI in your multiplayer game. And you can do it. What I like to do is I hop on a water map or something where people aren't really
Oh, you cut out a little bit there. Go ahead and you say you hop on a water map.
have mod. I'll just again yeah, so I'll host an online game on a water map or something, and it's kind of funny to get some unsuspecting players online sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Like in like just a general lobby, like you just bring them in, they're like, whoa, this is totally different. It really brings a new meaning to comp stomp. I don't know if you played in Legacy, but I mean, when I was a little kid, right? Because I didn't
Oh,
know.
I
Yeah,
play them all the time.
yeah. See, I didn't know how to play Age of Empires 3 because I was little kid. It's a tough game, and so but I loved, this kind of period of time, and I loved the uniforms and all that kind of stuff. So then I would play, and then I would always join the comp stomp lobbies, right? And then it would just be like 4v4 madness, right, with the walls all throughout, and you just go nuts. And so that seems really cool. I highly encourage anybody listening to this to check out the Assertive AI. Could improve your gameplay, but like you're saying, it's also just to help that single player experience. I think a lot of people, especially our audience, who's going to be, I would say, 99% multiplayer, don't realize the fact that the majority of our player base is going to be casual and single player. And it's kind of a shame that our AI experience has pretty much stayed stale, especially considering that, for them, they're going to need a new AI experience, to continue to play the game for their own single player experience. So I think that's really cool that you did that.
Right, and definitely, if you look at the single player experience, and doing single player skirmishes against the AI is certainly going to get old.
Oh yeah.
Eventually. So it is nice to at least go online and play with some other humans against the AI, or go and play some of these historical maps against the AI, stuff like that.
Sick. I love it. Now, I'm going to circle back because you mentioned this thing called Age of Pirates. So what is Age of Pirates? So is that like a game within a game?
Right, so Age of Pirates is probably one of the biggest, most ambitious mods in Definitive Edition right now. And what it does is it adds new maps and new natives and new mechanics to the game through the maps and the native settlements. And then obviously it also has the custom AI on top of it. So maybe new maps and new natives doesn't sound as crazy as it is. You're looking at stuff like water natives, where the native trading posts can build ships directly on the coast.
Oh.
You've got some crazy maps with portions that are underwater. You've got submarines, you've got airships, you've got armored trains that can go along the trade route. You've got volcanoes that will erupt mid-game. And so this is, it really pushes the limits of the engine here, and really pushing what sort of stuff you can actually do in this game. Definitely shout out to Rhoda, who goes by Baltazar on the forums. He's sort of the lead guy who's pushing a lot of those boundaries, and I'm just the guy who comes along and tries to get the AI to figure out how to play that.
So this is like this is just a totally new Age of Empires experience. Like, you don't download Age of Pirates and you're thinking like, oh, they kind of like revamp the naval stuff and add more pirates. You're thinking like, okay, like maybe, they did some things with Haiti, or they did some things with, I don't know, right? Like there's Ivory Coast or whatever. You're like, no, this is like an entirely new experience within the Age of Empires 3 DE, that if you're going to download this and play this, just understand that it's going to be absolutely different.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So like you can download a map and play it normally, because a lot of these mechanics are within the native settlements themselves. And so I'd say it's both. Like, you can play a map normally, and then you can play this sort of completely off the wall underwater portion of the game and build naval mines all over your underwater portion and try to capture all the little, the sunken shipwrecks and all of that.
So cool. That's really cool. So then, is this also multiplayer compatible with people, like to play together, or no?
Well, so you can both have the mod downloaded and installed, and then you can play with each other.
Okay. Well, yeah, obviously. So then
anything that, once you start editing units and stuff, you obviously can't just hop on a ranked lobby with it. But we do test it as much as we can in multiplayer with both people having it installed.
Okay. And so what was the kind of like, I guess I'm really curious, what was the spark of inspiration to put you guys together to make something like that? Or has Age of Pirates existed for a very long time and was like brought over into the DE?
No, so this is a DE mod. As far as I know, the other guy, Rhoda, has not worked on Legacy at all. Started in DE.
Mm-hmm.
I know. So when I started, we both started separately, and we were both kind of focused on the water aspect of the game. So when we had met up, I had my AI, which was almost entirely just water changes and water improvements at that time. And then he had a few maps along with this naval native concept. So he had, it was just like Pirates of the Caribbean, Burma, Dead Sea, and I think another map that he had at that time. And then obviously it's got the native upgrade system. So the natives in Age of Pirates have this like mini subciv concept to them where you upgrade them in H3 and choose a politician
Oh, cool.
to upgrade your native settlement. So you choose between, to use the pirate captains, you can choose between one of the pirate captains, and then you get access to that pirate flagship along with some other additional techs and maybe another unit to train. And so he had that sort of concept, but obviously if these are all water maps, then the AI is not going to really know how to play them. So at that time, it was kind of a perfect match where I had the water AI, he had all these water maps. Why not merge that together and then get a more playable experience in one package?
So then, what? Like, how did you guys meet then? Did he just like put out a wanted poster on the
Oh,
forums?
I just bumped into him on the forums.
Oh, really? Okay. So like he was
Yeah,
just talking
so
about something he was working on.
I forget exactly what he was talking about, but I just found the forum thread one day, and I spend way too much time on the forums and Discord and stuff. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
when I when I see the thread about Age of Pirates or whatever, and I click on it and I see all these water maps, I think, wait a minute. I just asked him like, have you messed with the AI? Does the AI play any of these? And obviously the standard AI doesn't do particularly well on water, so if he hadn't made a bunch of water changes, it was going to be a good fit to try to merge those projects together.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I'm really curious about this, and this is a big thing that I wanted to ask when I was bringing you onto the podcast. I was like, oh, I really want to ask him this. Is it particularly difficult to work on this game in terms of just, I don't know, I'm not a coder. I work in politics, so you'll have to, I don't know if this is the right way to ask it, but is this game's code or whatever the systems are on the interior, are they particularly difficult to work with, or do you feel like modding is pretty easy on this system, that it's relatively plug and play?
So I'd say as far as games go, I haven't spent a lot of time modding other games, but from what I understand, as far as games go, this is one of the easier ones to mod. And I know the developers have put a lot of work into building that system of the additive data mods, so you can, if you have to, say, add a new unit, you don't have to update your entire, it's called Proto-Y, but it's the list of all the units in the game. When you make a mod, you just add the units that you want to that list. So when the game gets updated, maybe there's a couple little conflicts, but you don't have to go through and add all the developers' changes to it, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay.
As far as, then there's some other issues of like a lot of the files are they're compressed in different data files, so you just need the right tools and extractors to get to that. But a lot of that has been available for a pretty long time on DE.
So then, can you share with us your perspective, right? Because I think the community sits around and we're kind of like, why haven't they put out a patch? Like, what is this with a data patch? Why haven't we gotten the same sort of stuff that other games have gotten, like Age of Mythology? What's up with the UI system or the ranking system or the profile page, right? Like all these things that we're always constantly talking about in terms of just the quality of life of the game. What is your perspective on that as somebody who mods, right? Or do you look at that and you say, well, people don't really understand, it's actually quite difficult for them to make these changes, and people don't really understand what they're asking for? Or do you find that it's like, no, actually, like I create AI scripts for this and I'm able to get these things to work, in my off time from my full-time job, so I don't understand what is so difficult about producing content for this game?
Yeah, I'd say I'll give the boring answer, which I think there's a lot of truth in all of those opinions. So, in a certain sense, you could give me a data patch that says, just changes unit stats. Like the cost of this unit will slightly change, the attack of this unit will slightly change, and I could knock that out very quickly. We're talking like an hour, maybe even less.
Jeez.
At the same time, I understand how that can also cause issues. So, like, a good example is you change the cost of the Taunton Slinger from 30 to 35 wood, and you forget that there's a card somewhere that changes the wood cost into a coin cost, so now that card goes from... Now there's an additional buff of that card, because now it only costs 30 gold, and you forgot to change that to 35. And even, you edit an 8 crossbow card somewhere, and then it turns out you screwed up the reference, and now a different civ can't ship it. Like, you can see there's so much to go through that you can cause errors. And so, in a sense, it's like, yes, I can change things very quickly, but testing all of those changes and making sure everything works with... Not only that it works, but it works with every single civ in the game. You can start to see that maybe it takes a bit longer to go through all of that process. You also look at even the most recent patch where there wasn't a ton there on the most recent patch. It was just like a little data patch. Even when you start to look at like some of the little bug fixes and stuff, it's easy to see that a lot of that stuff can take a lot longer than you first realize. And then if you're getting into the point of, you're spending most of your time trying to actually add content into this game. A modder can make a quick reskin of a unit in an afternoon, but like a developer can't just make quick reskins of units, right? They have to make a high quality... Well, they should probably be making high quality new models, new textures, and all of that. And of course, thoroughly testing all of that. And so you can kind of see how, while yes, I can do a lot of this stuff extremely quickly, there's that other side of, getting that all the way up to developer quality and making sure there aren't a lot of issues in it could take a lot longer. Of course, a lot longer in this instance may be a week, not instead of an hour.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it's kind of one of those weird toss-ups where you're kind of saying, well, the work that they do is going to be a little bit different, so it's going to take longer. But you would also say, based on that last little part, right, that you're not entirely sure if it would take the amount of months, right, that it takes in between content releases. I don't know if you're... It sounded as if you were saying you weren't so sure about that kind of timeline, or did I misunderstand?
Right. So like maybe here's a good example. I do these little like holiday UI mods, seasonal UI mods, where it'll do a little Christmas UI and then it'll do a little New Year's UI, and you can just stay subscribed to that and it'll update throughout the year. A little late on Christmas this year, but there are real life reasons for that. But the point I'm getting at is I can knock out one of those little holiday UI mods in an afternoon. So I can go in there and I can change the button color, and I can go into the, a couple of the images and change the colors of them. So now you've got a little black menu with orange buttons and a pumpkin on it for Halloween. Problem is, like, would you as a player accept that as if the developers put out that as a Halloween event, would you actually accept that as high enough quality? Or is it only acceptable because I'm a modder working for free?
It's a good question, because you're saying that the changes are only amongst the UI, right? It's not like, I go into the game and the TC has pumpkins around it, like a pumpkin patch around it,
Right.
Okay, so, or like the
So if
Hussar
the
don't have
so
like
yes, I
jack-o'-lantern
can.
heads.
Yeah, so yes, maybe I can knock out a holiday UI in an afternoon, but is the quality of that actually high enough to count as developer content, or does it would a developer have to actually sit there and go the extra mile, and it would take them a few days, a week to actually go through and make sure all of the UI is detailed, make sure it's working in every single resolution, all of that sort of stuff. And so that's where I don't necessarily know the answer of, is this stuff, done quickly, or are we being too harsh on the devs for saying that they should be able to get some of this stuff done faster?
Or at all. Because my
Or
question,
at all.
yeah, I mean, like, because how difficult is it to, I don't know, fully update, the UI, like the profile page. Let's just take the profile page, right? When you go and you look at your own profile page, how difficult is it to add, I don't know, a different kind of ranking that we've talked about a lot, right? Like bringing back the old ranking system, or, adding, customizable banners, that you could kind of earn or something like that. Like, I mean, obviously they would have to like test all those things, and, there would be new models that are added. But I mean, I have a hard time believing that something like that would take, 9 months for, let's just say, 1 or 2 developers to make.
Well, I guess when I think about something like that, it's like the question is, why wouldn't they do it? If it is easy, why wouldn't they just do it?
Mm-hmm.
And why wouldn't they just sit down tonight or tomorrow or, whenever, and take one afternoon and just fix that? And there could be good reasons, like you might actually need engineering support on the back end to change the engine because you didn't have some sort of reference built in already. Or it could be really simple. There could just be something somewhere that calculates the rank, and you could just change that very easily. And you're just sort of choosing not to. I mean, it's certainly frustrating to see some of these issues go on for so long when pretty much everyone agrees that what's in game is not all that great, and you would like to have the old system back.
Yeah, it's
tough, because I don't want to just throw the devs under the bus and say, oh, you should be able to knock this out really quickly, when I don't know if there's a real problem on the back end. But the real problem could also be that we haven't seen an update in 9 months, and they haven't been working on the game at all during that time. I mean, that's probably the most likely case, that they were working on Age of Mythology, trying to get Age of Mythology out, and all hands were on deck for that game, while Age of Empires 3 just sort of
just
coasted along.
And I'm asking you about modding, not necessarily communication. I feel like that's something that we've gone over, but I just wanted to get some more insights into that. And it's true, we don't exactly know what it would take, so, does it need to be the amount of months and months and months? No, probably not. But at the same time, we don't know exactly, like you're saying, that when you pull on one thread, you may be pulling on lots of threads. And it's not so much of just like swapping things out. It's not like a hot swapping in the game. There may be something, within it itself that needs to be changed. Do you find that the modding scene is quite robust in Age of Empires 3, or like are you one of the only games in town basically?
But no, I'd say there's a lot of great guys out there working on this game. And this game also, keep in mind, allows you to do a lot to it. So we can just add new civs to this game if we want. We can completely overhaul the UI if we want, depending on what you mean by that. Um, we can go through, we could just open up the AI script and go and edit the AI script. So it's really, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of guys doing a lot of cool stuff with that freedom. So I'd say it's definitely one of the best games that I've played when it comes to mods like that.
Interesting.
And from
Okay.
what I understand, it's quite a bit more free than even the other Age of Empires games.
That's good to know. And you know, and then it makes me wonder about this next question. I don't know why World's Edge doesn't go and call all of you up, you know, like really good modders on the scene and just say, hey, like, here's a 1 year contract for you to work remote for a year and, you know, give us some results, make some stuff, and, you know, we'll put it in the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I have so I like have an in-law who works in gaming, and the modder to develop pipeline is very real. Like a lot of people get hired to work on games who were previously modding them. And I know like Tylenus himself comes from the Napoleonic era mod, right? So
Oh, I don't know what his origin story is, to be honest with you, actually.
I thought that's what it was. I could be wrong about that, but I thought there was thought that's, you know, kind of how he found his way into it. And Forgotten Empires themselves, I thought they were also sort of born out of a modding team.
Oh,
I guess the short answer that I do know is true is that there's a very real pipeline of modders becoming game developers, and I don't know why World's Edge isn't contacting the Age of Pirates team or contacting, Keto at the Age of the World or anything like that. Certainly be cool if they did.
it would be cool if they did. I think that's what kind of leads to some frustration because they say like, you know, they download Age of Pirates and you have all this, you know, you get all these cool maps and you have like you're selling us basically a theme park ride within Age of Empires 3 DE, and people are like, okay, so you know, a couple of guys just did this, you know, and put this on together in their free time, which is great. You know, that's an awesome thing, and the community needs stuff like that, and that's why we're kind of advertising it here. But then they're also like, well, you know, like you said, you know, would that be satisfactory? I don't know, but I think there was somebody
Right.
in the official Discord that was like, you know, hey, where's our, and this is also disappointing, like we don't have a Christmas event. Like you brought up the Christmas thing, right? We don't have a Christmas event coming up. It doesn't seem like it, right? We are now going to be 10 days out from Christmas, and so it's kind of, you know, it's you just know that like in 10 days there's not gonna be anything. But would it be acceptable for them to go around and say like, okay, well here's, you know, here's like a new UI thing, and maybe, I don't know, but I think what I'm trying to say is that it is kind of frustrating to see like these great mods that are coming out and these wonderful screenshots that I'm seeing of Age of Pirates and things like that, and you're talking about this experience and you know, we're not getting anything from our official development team. So it kind of creates this sort of, I think it kind of creates this disconnect, because then people in the official Discord are like posting screenshots from Age of Pirates and they're like, why are the developers doing this? Which I guess is a compliment to you and your team.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the screenshots are all going to be compliments to Rhoda mostly, but I'm sure they're also, happy that they can play against the AI on all those maps.
Right.
Um, yeah, it might also be worth remembering that they tried that for Age of Empires 2, where they grabbed a pretty famous scenario maker and polished up the maps and made them a bit more professional and sold that. And then people widely criticized that, and they weren't particularly happy about it.
Wasn't that in the new?
And I think
So wasn't that like that Twitch event? I didn't understand that because I've never played AoE 2, but they said that like, oh, they had that huge announcement, right? That we're gonna rework this stuff and it's gonna be the DLC, whatever. And then you realize that it was just, what was it? It was just repackaged maps. Is that what you're saying? That they just?
Yeah. So it was. I think it was. I'll get the counts wrong, but it was like 10 maps that were already available on the mod browser, and then another like 5 that were not. And they sold them all together. They did more to them, so they polished them up and they gave them voice acting and they made them like a professional scenario. But it didn't go over particularly well, and so that has you kind of wondering, well, if we took Age of Pirates and we made 5 new maps and sold it for $5, would people actually be happy with that, or would they be mad because maybe number one, they were already getting it for free on the mod browser, and
Right.
Two, maybe it's not exactly what they would expect from an actual DLC from the game. They may compare that to say, for $5 I wanted a new Civ, not a bunch of new natives because I don't like natives in the first place. Something like that. It's kind of hard to say, and I don't know how much of that criticism is really fair, or if it was just, fans just being, fans being fans, wanting something that they didn't get.
Right. It is a sort of weird balance though, because it's like, people will say, like, let's just take Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark. That's set to release at some point in the future, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I hate this," and this is a terrible, terrible decision. Well, why is it a terrible decision? Oh, because I didn't want it, or I didn't see anybody who actually wanted this change. And you're like, well, anecdotally, like, how much are you really experiencing in terms of the population size of greater Age of Empires 3? And just because something is happening that you don't necessarily want doesn't necessarily mean that the community as a whole doesn't want it. And so you get a lot of people who spend a lot of time, a lot of free time, trying to convince other people that they also didn't want the thing that they themselves did not want, which is a really weird phenomenon to come up against, because I didn't want any new civs to begin with, but people want new civs, but I'm not going to go around and try to convince other people that you also did not want new civs. So it's just odd. I see that dynamic a lot, and I guess that's my next question to you, is that what's going on with the forums? Like, as an outlet for our community, like, you're on there, I'm not on there anymore. I think I got banned. I did get banned. So I went on there one time, like, as Sir Shark Dad, and I remember very distinctly, like, going on a post, and I'm like, oh, hey man, like, this is obviously like alternate accounts from Revnak on a post, and I got banned. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I don't know, maybe that kind of explains the state of things over there, but you're more familiar.
Well, if it's the thread I'm thinking of, then it was a pretty easy place to get banned, probably. But
well, what thread are you thinking?
I mean, the
of?
forums are where you go to. The 250 wood trading post, I think, is
this was
the more recent one.
Yeah, this was a while ago. I've heard things about the 250 wood trading post idea change. And so I guess that's been a pretty popular thread, I guess, because let's just say some totally authentic account, showed up and made a proposal to change it to 250 wood, and that probably ruffled feathers.
Yeah, well, just putting that aside, I mean, the forums are where you go to complain about the game, right? So people are not going to the forums necessarily to talk about how much they love all of the features. It's more to request new features, things that you want changed, that kind of thing. At least that's what I typically see on there. And so I'm already forgetting the original question, but like,
Yeah,
the fact that
what are
the
you seeing on
forums
there? Yeah,
are, I mean, the fact that the forums are geared more towards what you want to change in the game just kind of puts a lot of it into perspective. Like you'll see lots of different threads about we should change the balance of this unit or we should do this slightly differently. It's just sort of what the forums are at this point, I guess. Though there's also some great resources if you want help on your mod or something like that. People will often answer on there. And you can report bugs as well, though the developers don't respond to those anymore.
So then, why do you think that the modding scene? So the modding scene typically uses the forums, you think, or what is that outlet like for you guys then? Because like you're saying, is that instead of being a place for just questions and answers and all these kinds of things, it seems to be a place that is more for, I don't know, like you said, complaining. So do you guys do mainly your advertising on there, or is that how you meet people? I'm wondering how that scene kind of coordinates with each other through the forums, or if you do at all.
Well, from the modding perspective, it's one of the few places where you can advertise and talk about your mod with sort of the general population. Other than that, it's all of the typical social media sites. But that's limited to like Discord and Reddit. So if you're gonna make a thread advertising your mod, then you should probably have one on the official forums.
Gotcha.
And you can, if you're a new user, like there's resources on Age of Empires website that will help get you started, describe how to set up a mod, the folder structure, the types of file names and all that. So there's a lot of good resources on there. And if you create a little thread in the modding section to get help with your mod, you'll get responses from knowledgeable people. So I don't want to knock the forums too much. I'm just trying to, if we talk about the discussion section, that's more where the complaining would be. The modding section is, there's a little bit of complaining too there.
But
right?
it's different.
So,
it's mainly different.
Hey, your mod's not working.
Yeah, and then I get you. There's a discussion section, mod section, so it's going to be different. I will say, if the mod is not working, definitely go to that. If the mod is not working, definitely reach out on the forums or somewhere like that. That's our preferred place to get feedback like that. Okay.
As opposed to just opening up one day and finding a 1-star review, hey, your mod is broken. It's definitely easier to help troubleshoot with someone if they're just dropping it in the discussion section or something like that.
Do you get to play the game at all for yourself, or are you just like pretty much most of the time you're working on mods or testing those mods?
Well, in my case specifically, this is pretty much the only game I play.
Okay.
Last year's Steam analytics, it was 90% definitive edition, 7% legacy, and 3% everything else. So in my case, I'm either modding the game or playing it. And I do a fair bit of both, I'd say.
Okay.
It sort of helps as an AI modder. It's definitely good to be decent at the game as well. If you're going to try to make the AI make intelligent decisions, you kind of need to know what the intelligent decisions are in the first place.
So are you mainly a single player guy, or do you play ranked at all? Both.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Well, yeah, both. I'm on the ladder. I'm like 1400 1v1 ELO and like 1600 team.
Okay, so you're a pretty good player.
What you would call low ELO.
No,
Yeah, low ELO.
I would not call that low elo, but I would definitely say solidly mid. So then I'm curious as to what you think the state of the game is, in terms of its balance and also in terms of its community. I'm sure you're plugged in with, like, you're talking to a lot of different people. You're in the modding scene. So when you take a step back, how do you feel we're performing as an RTS in general? And, how do you feel we're at, like, in terms of our balance and in terms of our communities? I know that's like a wider question, but I think that's kind of a huge discussion that's going on of, like, where do we find ourselves and where are we going? So, and for somebody who spends a lot of time in this game, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I guess there's a few ways to answer that, because this is the one game I play. I love this game. I spend time modding it and playing it pretty much every day. So it's hard to say that it's in a bad spot when I dedicate so much time to it. At least I would feel bad about myself if I said that the game sucked, and that's why I spend every day playing and modding it,
Yeah. Well, some people would say
That's why
that.
I'm on the Discords every day.
Yeah.
I'm not on the Discord every day because I hate the state of the game. I'm on the Discord every day because I enjoy playing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the flip side of that, there's more infighting than I'd like to see between the players. There's probably more complaining than I'd like to see. And I'm guilty of it too, and I wish that we were getting more content from the developers. We're kind of in this, we're in this limbo stage right now where we don't know if we're getting abandoned or not, because we've got an announced DLC on the way, but we haven't seen like a single piece of evidence that they've even worked on it yet.
They made flags.
They
made 2 flags.
They did make the flags. I can make those flags. Well, I won't tell you how quick I can make those flags, but I think there's a reason we got 2 flags and not a piece of in-game.
Yeah, like
there's a reason it was 2 flags and not a picture of a unit, or because that's how I would tease it. It wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have told you the civs. I would have, like they did with the USA, and people were trying to guess what the carbine cavalry unit was. Or the berries.
They just did like still shots, right? I'm trying to remember if they even did a gameplay demonstration, but instead they just did like still shots. I remember seeing that where, like, you saw, which is silly because we already had a sort of like United States light in terms of the historical battles, right? Because we had the Battle of New Orleans that already existed.
Right.
So, whatever. But, I remember some still shots being in that, not any sort of gameplay demonstrations. So then you said something interesting where, you're like, oh, I can make the flag super quick and I don't know if the game is abandoned or not. So then that makes me want to say, or ask, I should say, that I mentioned something earlier, I think in a conversation with Mr. V, where I asked him, if we would just feel better if the developers, turned around and said, hey, you know what, like, this is the last patch and we're turning it over to the community, and basically just handed all the keys to the kingdom up to the modding scene. Do you feel like that would be better for us as a community if we just had that sort of, I don't know, that firm answer where it says you're done? We're no longer touching this game anymore. It is at the end of its life cycle. Would that be better for us? Like, and then we can kind of like coordinate all that and make the changes we want to make? Or do you feel as if, no, we would still want the developers to stick to this game at least for a few more years from where you're standing right now?
Yeah, so I'd say when they do make that decision, I want them to make it that way. Like, I want them to tell us, this is the last DLC, or this is the, do what someone does on a campaign trail where they say, I'm, permanently suspending my campaign, something like that, or permanently have no plans in the future of adding any more DLC, but obviously if the game takes off for some reason, then they might come back. Um, I think that would definitely, that's the way I want it to go. But at the same time, I also don't want content to end for the game, right? I want it to keep going. But of course, it's, you know, from the modding perspective, it's bittersweet. Every time they come out with more data and new DLC, I'm going to have to go back and try to make sure all the mods still work. It's kind of a little, I mean, it's difficult to mod a game that's being actively produced and worked on. But, you know, obviously I want the game to do well. I want it to grow, and I want there to be more content for it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Would it
of.
help? Like I said, we're kind of in that limbo stage where it's, you know, are they still developing? Are they not? Are
Yeah.
they gonna fix some of these big bugs that I want them to fix? Are they just gonna kind of float off? Like, we knew that there would be a slow period while Age of Mythology was getting developed, but I also, when I thought there would be a slow period, I thought there would still be like data patches every couple months, you know, like these little balance patches. I didn't think it would just be 9 months of silence like it was.
Yeah, super weird, right? I guess what I'm thinking of is the back in the day, the ESOC patches. I don't know if you were around for that, but the kind of, you know, competitive ESOC maps that were made, and the ESOC balance patches where the community kind of came together and said, okay, these are the changes that need to be made to make the game a lot more balanced, and making, you know, more competitive maps for the map pool for their tournaments and things like that. So I'm imagining that if the keys were handed over to the modders and said, no, nothing more is going to be added to this, it's up to you guys now to carry it on, that we would see a sort of, you know, kind of rallying around the flag in a concentric effort to make sure that, hey, you know, the modding scene is gonna make sure that we're putting in the content in this game and making the changes that need to be made in order for it to continue on and to thrive in the way that it needs to, without the developers releasing new content. I don't know if we would have something like that following such an announcement, is kind of what I'm getting at. And I wonder if that would be better for us rather than the sort of weird, I don't know, like not knowing what's going on next rather than just say.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that effort, like the ESOC effort, would be driven more by the professional community than the modding community. Modders tend to be more, I would say most modders are more interested in making our new civs and making our new units and making our new crazy stuff. At least the ones who are modding right now seem to be more along that line. And then most of the work in, say, making like a new balance mod, the work for that would be coming up with the actual balance changes in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The modding aspect is not as, I mean, it's not interesting at all for me personally to code balance changes into a game. Now, the maps are a little different because obviously making new maps is very cool, and it's an interesting area of modding where you're making new maps and you're trying to make them balanced and you're considered about all the considering all the competitive aspects of the map. But that's an effort that's really driven more by the professional players, I'd say.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And then a guy like me can just, a guy like me can just take the list of changes and code it very quickly.
Okay.
Unless they start doing a bunch of weird stuff and they want to change the way the techs work and change the decks that a civ has, you know.
So ESOC better not come calling to you. Like if they said, okay, well, you know, we're gonna bring people together and we're gonna try to, you know, we're gonna make changes to the UI and we're gonna add balance stuff and we're gonna revamp the game now that it's done and it's at the end of its life. They just don't message you. You're like, I'm not
No, they
interested.
can message me. They just need to get everything figured out first.
Okay.
So they need to come up with their balance patch and all that, and then they can message someone like me. I don't think the modding community would necessarily lead that effort, is all I'm saying. So it would be something where the professional community would lead the effort on, hey, this is what we want. And there are plenty of people, I think there's plenty of people involved with ESOC who have that, the modding knowledge to be able to make a little balance patch like that.
Does ESOC still mod? I was unfamiliar with the idea that there are more people in the professional scene who also mod the game. I'm ignorant of that.
I think there are individuals I see on there who are certainly capable of making something like that. Like, we got people like Danzel who helped out with a bunch of ESOC maps. I think he made a bunch.
Is it true that he's a developer now? I heard rumors of that.
Well, you could go to the credits page and find out.
Oh. Like on the game? Are you on the game right now?
No, I'm not on the game right now.
So if I go to the game right now.
But yeah, Danzel is credited in the credits, if I remember right.
Is he? That's interesting.
Yeah, nobody reads the credits. You can find a few names in there that you might recognize.
All right, somebody go check. Somebody go check. I'm curious. I didn't realize that because I don't think his name is like really tagged as being like any, I don't know, like how like in Discord or wherever they always have a fancy name that's like, hey, I'm this, so I'm curious now. I'm wondering if let me see.
Right.
And then also you were
maybe these people have been hiding, and so maybe nobody checked the credits. I don't know.
And then you were also making an art, and I know this is not necessarily related to modding, but I remember distinctly, and I know I'm bringing the real world into this now because I wanted to ask you about. You were talking about at some point somewhere on the internet. I think that was you. You were talking about the numbers of 3DE and how it's actually one of the more popular RTSs on Steam by numbers.
Right. So, yeah, if you go to Steam charts and you take the definition of real-time strategy strict enough, then you can sort on the Steam chart page of, top games by genre, real-time strategy, and there are on that list 10th or 11th, if I remember right. But a lot of things on that list, Dota 2 is not a real-time strategy game, and some of the others are not real-time strategy either. And you see that the order is like Age of Empires 2, Age of Empires 4, and then Northgard and Age of Empires 3 are kind of tied for third place. Now, what exactly does that mean? I don't know, because maybe the third most popular RTS game isn't really worth that much. Maybe that's just a testament to how unpopular RTS is. It's really tough to know. And then obviously there are games that aren't on Steam, so StarCraft 2 is not going to show up, and
oh yeah, that's fair.
StarCraft 3 or whatever other games. But and then if you look up like most selling games of all time, Age of Empires 3 is on that list. So it's just kind of, the broader point was we always think of Age of Empires 3 as like the black sheep of the Age of Empires family. The game that didn't sell well enough to have an Age of Empires 4 and some other stuff that people talk about like that. How come it doesn't have as many players as Age of Empires 2? All these questions, but you look at the sales numbers of the game and how many people play it today. And you compare it with, how many people are still playing Command and Conquer, how many people are still playing Company of Heroes, and the answer is more people play Age of Empires 3 on Steam than they do Company of Heroes. And so if you're looking at other titles in this genre and you see that Age of Empires 3 is doing better than them, you're kind of scratching your head like, well, how is that not good enough to to keep the support up by the
Well,
developers.
I guess
You know,
somebody
is
could say that, well, it's free to play. So if you're counting a download as a sale, they're not making any money off that. And so maybe like going free to play was a sort of, I don't know, death knell for the game to say, hey, like it's free to play and the developers aren't really giving it support. Like they're not like putting a lot of content in and monetizing that content. So this idea that like, oh, it's best selling, and or not best selling, but it sells well in its genre and has a good player base in its genre, people will just kind of shrug their shoulders at that. And some people may be confused, and then some people will say, well, it's free to play, so therefore it doesn't count for anything. I mean, would that be true, or is that a sort of wrong way of understanding that?
I mean, the first caveat is we don't know the actual numbers, right? We don't know what the sales numbers are. I'm sure
Right.
World's End and Microsoft know how much the game actually brings in. And all we can do is look at the Steam charts and try to make some comparisons here or there to other games that we see getting support. But for the free-to-play question, there was a bump of about 10 to 20% free and post free-to-play. So there's obviously that spike when it first goes free-to-play, and then that for the new normal. And that new normal is like 10 to 20% higher than the pre-free-to-play. So it's just kind of hard to say. Or I wouldn't say that, like, all of our players are just free-to-play players. It's definitely still the case that the majority of the players are still looks to me like the majority of the players still bought the game and are playing the paid version of the game. Plus you can also look at, say, because free-to-play players can't play on the ladder, right? So you can look at how many people are on the 1v1 ladder pre and post free-to-play. Well, it's about the same. So it's not like all of the ladder players just left and now it's just free-to-play players.
No, the core is dedicated, and then the slowly, as we kind of trickle in people, or people return, or people come over from other Age of Empires games, I find that like a lot of people stay. It becomes pretty. It's interesting, right? It's like it's not large, but it is a dedicated place. In fact, and probably that's one of my complaints, and it kind of echoes one of yours, is that the kind of complaining and the bickering that goes on, and the people, especially on the official Discord, my God, people just constantly spamming the same thing over and over and over again in that environment. It really comes from a place of like that core dedicated amount of people. And it's interesting because as an internet community, like just household names being passed around, and people who know each other, and pretty close-knit communities of friends that are able to form just because there are that, I want to say anywhere between like 6,000 and 8,000 people that are just kind of really dedicated to, playing the multiplayer on this game. So interesting.
Yeah, well, first of all, don't knock the official Discords. I find Doki just hilarious. I love checking in every day to see what he's saying.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There's so few people on the official Discord. Like,
yeah, there's like 10.
Maybe 10 of us who are just bantering back and forth. And then mostly just, you log in. Doki says, "Where's the patch today?" And you go, "Doki, it's Sunday. There's no patch today." It's just, I find it funny. It's hard. The stuff that has gotten to me more, there's been a couple times where little flame wars started here or there, but overall, it's nowhere near as bad as like a typical social media site. I think it's all fine.
Yeah, I think there are those people who argue that, well, obviously, the developers don't want to touch a toxic community like us. That's why we're always on the back burner. And I'm like, I've always argued here and elsewhere that I'm like, I don't think you know what a toxic community is then, because there
Yeah,
are,
also that's cute.
yeah,
You think they read the official Discord to
yeah,
see?
they're not. First off, they're not reading any of the stuff that is going on, and then even if you want to talk about, just like stuff that happens with, like, let's say Shake or Ravnak or whoever, it's like these are things that are drops in the bucket, because you're like, I don't think people realize that video game communities have like gotten violent, like people like will actually like go and like threaten devs, like they'll SWAT them and things like that just because people are like sickos that are just way too invested in the fantasy worlds of video games. We are nowhere near that. The kind of petty banter that goes on is no excuse, in my opinion, as like or indicative of a toxic community, like you're saying. I think we can be a little bit more positive amongst ourselves.
What I say is, if you don't say anything, the devs go, oh, there's nobody's interested. We should abandon the game. And then you say stuff, and they go, oh, they're toxic. You should abandon the game. It's
Yeah.
When the developers do show up, they normally don't get blamed or anything like that. The worst I've seen Tylenus get is, we're trolling him a little bit, telling him to buff the Ottomans some more. It's the worst I've seen. Worst I've seen Tylenus ever get. And
yeah,
Tylenus. How come Ottomans have to pay for their fishing boats? Why aren't they trained automatically for free? Stuff like that.
I think honestly, when we see them, we just get excited to talk to them because we're like, wow, you're here amongst us. That's crazy,
Yeah.
So
ask them questions we know they can't answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. So your mods, they're on the mod list, right? They can just tell us where to find your stuff, man.
Absolutely. So if you want to go download, if you want to download any mod, you go in-game mod browser, you go to tools, then mods, and then you can search for all sorts of mods. And there's tons of great ones. If you want to look for mine specifically, you can type in a username. I know on the website you can type in a username and it'll show up all of that user's mods on the browser. My big ones, if you're interested, Age of Pirates, I'm part of the team of over there, and then Assertive AI is the separate AI.
Okay, sweet. So everybody knows now where to go and find that, and how that could be a really good. Both of those can be, one is a great experience as a player, and then the other one being just a really good tool potentially for them. I appreciate you coming onto the show, lending your insights into the modding scene and all that consists of. And also as well getting to talk about the community and patching and developer stuff as well, and lending your perspective to that. I really appreciate it, Assertive Wall.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast episode. We really appreciate it. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Wow. Like, comment, subscribe. As usual. We're looking pretty healthy here. We're trying to get to 1,500, I think, is the next step, the next marker for us. We would really love it if you help us get there. It costs you nothing to subscribe, and we're not trying to sell you a membership channel or any sort of Patreon page or anything. Everything we do here is ad-free, so we make nothing off of it. So, it's all for you guys. So would really appreciate it if you subscribed. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you in the next one.